Let's get back to the politics here in Canberra. Joining me live in the studios, Labor MP, member for Parramatta, Andrew Chalton, and Liberal MP, member for Flinders, Zoe McKenzie. Great to see you both. Let's start on IR. Business groups kicking up a stink. Has Tony Burke overstepped the mark on the IR changes?
Well, we've had these concerns expressed by the Liberals and by business groups right throughout this term of government about the previous package, about this package. But we just need to look at the record. This government has now delivered record low unemployment and record jobs growth. And none of the predictions of disaster and unemployment and joblessness predicted by Zoe and her party have come to fruition. Because the truth is these changes modernise our labour market, they enshrine flexibility in many of our jobs, but also give workers basic protections and entitlements that are really standard and expected part of the Australian labour market.
Is it modernising the IR system by saying people have the right to disconnect, or is it entrenching a lack of productivity? Which is it?
It's just not working in the real world. So one of the issues, Andrew can point to certain changes in the employment market, but these IR bills haven't come into operation yet. Most of them will come into effect when there's royal assent in a few months' time or later on in the year. They are full of red tape. They are full in disincentivisation. They gaggle the gig economy in particular. I love hearing Andrew talk about this. Andrew's the only actual Labor MP I've ever quoted, and I quoted him in my maiden speech because he wrote an excellent report when he was in Alpha Beta, the company he established, all about the need for flexibility in the gig economy, not just because it's going to create growth, but it's because it's what the market wants. All of us in this building would constantly be approached by the young people who work for saying, you know, I'd rather be casual. I want to keep it flexible. The casual definition in these bills is now 3 pages long. How on earth is any small business meant to be able to navigate that when it actually comes into operation?
Well, a lot of what Zoe says is absolutely true. Australians do want flexibility. They wanted it before the pandemic, and the pandemic accelerated that. But the point is, we shouldn't be making Australians who want flexibility have to choose between flexibility and basic entitlements and protections. Things like leave, things like sick pay, things like superannuation. We're building a labour market through these reforms that enable people to have the flexibility that Zoe rightly says is so important and desirable in the modern world, but not to have to leave behind the basic and decent elements of jobs that we've come to
Something
expect.
like the right to disconnect, does that run counter to the trend that we've seen since COVID, particularly, of people having a great deal more flexibility, working 2-3 days from home, for example?
Well, nothing in the suggestion, and at the moment it's obviously still under discussion, but there's nothing in the suggestion of this proposal which prevents people from taking advantage of that flexibility, that prevents them from being on their phone at whatever time they choose to be in the evening. All it's saying is that you will have some rights to not have to be on your phone or at work late in the evening. And that's a discussion between employers and employees.
Yeah, but to my mind, Andrew, it's literally taking us back to the 1970s. I mean, we even had Tony Burke on TV on the weekend brandishing the beeper. Tony, bring back the beeper, Burke, telling us that's why we do things. Oh, you know, you've got kids. I've got kids. They work in retail. They work in hospitality. They know, you know, they get a call up at 10 p.m. because all the other Gen Zs have rung in and said, oh, I'm not coming tomorrow, I can't be there at 10 p.m. to the small business owner, and your kids are called up to work. And that's just how it works now. It suits the young people to be that flexible, and it just doesn't reflect the modern workplace.
Do you think the coalition needs to muscle up, I guess, for want of a better phrase, because since Work Choices, the coalition has been gun shy. Will you take this on in this election?
Yep, and also
this next election year?
In quoting Andrew in my maiden speech, I also said we need to toughen up on IR. But to be frank, Michaelia Cash is doing a pretty tough job on the floor of the Senate at the moment, arguing every point, presenting them with real-world scenarios and asking how on earth this will work. To be fair, this is Greens policy, but it's showing you the ever closer alliance between Labor and the Greens on economic issues, which are fundamentally dangerous for our country.
Is it dangerous politically too?
Well, I mean, to take the example that Zoe just gave of someone being called up for a shift late the night before because of the cancellation, you know, that scenario is explicitly included in the proposal. If you are contacting people about shifts, then that is completely legitimate, and the proposal makes that clear. So, you know, the best example that Zoe can come up with is already completely incorporated.
Except that the owner's going to have to look at the rules before he responds to the text, right? That's the thing. We are inundating people with red tape and complication. They're not even, the small business owners aren't even catching up with what you guys did a year ago. So to add more layers, if I look at the current bill is bigger than the Workplace Relations Act I practiced in the late 90s. So just the ex-memo is bigger than the bill I practiced in when I was an IR lawyer in the 90s. It's madness. People can't keep up.